Hello and welcome to the Farming Today This Week podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, the price of milk. Are UK dairy farmers facing the sharpest milk price crash in history?
All of this macro global trade and toing and froing has had an impact on individual farmers across the EU and the UK.
And keeping farm animals fed on the Western Isles.
The last load I came in with was about 560 wee bales and about 54 round bales. So some people want wee bales and some people want round bales, so you have to try and mix it all together. It's a bit of a jigsaw.
Bales by land and sea later in the programme. Let's start with the profit farming businesses make or don't make. This week, MPs on the Environment Select Committee questioned Baroness Batters, the former NFU president who wrote the government-commissioned review on farm profitability. It was published just before Christmas and, as you'd expect, Baroness Batters told the MPs all 57 recommendations should be implemented. The committee chairman, Alistair Carmichael, also asked her about the proposed farming roadmap, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs blueprint for the future of the industry.
DEFRA needs to be talking to many more farmers, and that is in the recommendation in the agri-growth hubs and also the catchment approach. There is not a relationship with the farmers on the ground at the moment, which is why so many do not understand what the plan is.
And Baroness Batters told the committee DEFRA's civil servants need to get their wellies on and get them muddy to understand farming from the inside.
I have to say, to start off with, I said they should be sleeping in the lambing sheds, and then I decided that was better to change that and say they should be helping in the daytime in the lambing sheds. But what I was trying to establish was you've got to get out of Whitehall. You've got to get out to understand. Equally, farmers have got to come in. So you've got to have change on both sides of understanding and working and developing together.
Baroness Batters emphasised that food production should be profitable and that each farming sector should have its own plan. This, she said, would allow output to be monitored and increase UK-grown food supply. There were also detailed questions from the MPs about the future of England's Sustainable Farming Incentive, or SFI. This, as you may remember, is one of the environmental land management schemes, or ELMs, which replaced EU payments. It pays farmers for the environmental work they do. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have their own different schemes. Well, the Sustainable Farming Incentive was suddenly shut last March as the money ran out, and it won't reopen until June, with applications initially restricted to small farms. Baroness Batters said the SFI's structure was a mistake.
I think it was set up in totally the wrong way. If you have a scheme that is open-ended and demand-led, you have no idea what the demand will be, so you have no idea of the value that will be demanded. So you can understand why the Treasury would be enormously frustrated by a scheme like that. And then to come into government without the knowledge of this scheme could run out of money. And of course, in the desire in the last Parliament to get the money out the door, the payment rates were raised. So a lot of people then did come forwards. But because, again, it was demand-led and you didn't know what the demand would be, the money disappeared very quickly. So in many ways, it was set up to fail. But it is, I think, the SFI can be a really good scheme. And it is the scheme. So we've got to now make it work.
Baroness Minette Batters at the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee. Staying with profitability, this week DEFRA published its most recent set of Farm Business Survey figures for the year from March 2024 to February 2025. They show that average incomes across all farm types rose by 49%. James Webster-Rusk from the consultants Andersons told Kaz Graham that the stats also paint a picture of just how important non-farming enterprises and those government schemes which pay farmers for environmental work have become.
On the whole, on the face of things, they do show an increase in the profitability of English farming from the year 2023-24 to the year ending February 2025. There are some challenges within that, though. One thing we do see is the real drive of increase in agri-environment scheme income and also in diversification income, not necessarily in the income from agriculture, the business of farming itself. And we see also a significant variation between some of the sectors as well. So from year to year, we see a good increase in the performance of dairy businesses, and we also see some increases coming through for poultry, but other sectors have fared less well, notably the cereals and the general cropping sector.
The price that farmers are now being paid by dairy processors is in a major slump. So although they had a really good year in this particular one that these figures represent, it doesn't really mean that that's going to continue, does it?
No, absolutely. The dairy sector and the cereal sector look set for further challenges. The cereal sector in particular had a poor year, challenging yields. It was a particularly wet establishment period. And then also we've seen cereal prices fall. That's 2 years of losses from agriculture, the business of farming, business of producing crops. And if it wasn't for agri-environment schemes and diversification, those businesses would be making a loss.
James Webster-Rusk from Andersons. Well, as Kaz mentioned, the relative highs of the last financial year may well feel like ancient history to dairy farmers right at the moment. The price they're paid for milk has been tumbling since the autumn, with further cuts announced this month. The reason? A perfect storm of geopolitical events coinciding with a boom in production. Dairy analyst Chris Walkland talked Kaz through the situation.
There was obviously a huge trade scrap between Trump and China earlier in the year. And one of the net effects of that was a ban, I think it was a total ban on soya exports to China from the US. There was a lot of soya kicking around on the US market, and that made US feed prices a lot cheaper. So dairy farmers capitalised on the cheap feed, fed their cows a lot more concentrate, and that resulted in additional milk yields in America. But it's not just the China trade deals that had an impact. Trump was also playing hardball on trade with us and the EU. A lot of butter was imported into the EU at the same time as milk production really started to ramp up over here.
Because dairy farmers in the UK had a really strong year last year, didn't they?
Yes, and they did in the EU. So not only was there strong milk production in the EU and the UK, the Americans started to export a lot more butter over here. They've never done it before. And the traders in Europe said, oh, we'll have some of that cheaper American stuff. All of this macro global trade and toing and froing has had an impact on individual farmers across the EU and the UK.
Here in the UK, dairy farmers had, as I mentioned earlier, this record year of milk production. What was behind that last year?
If you actually take the milk volumes that they produced in 2025, multiply it by the milk price, it was record incomes. All of the milk production ducks lined up in a perfect row. The weather was okay for most. Some were affected by drought. Milk prices were really good. Feed prices were cheap. There were no animal disease problems in the EU or in America. And all of the ducks lined up for brilliant milk production, and the farmers capitalised on that. And now they are all over the world effectively being a victim of their own success.
And the difficult thing for a lot of UK dairy farmers, I suppose, is that the milk prices that they receive are now going down, but they're going to want to keep driving production up, aren't they? Because the prices are lower, but they still need to pay the bills, don't they?
That is the temptation a lot of them will have. When the milk price drops, they produce more to try and maintain their income. And we're in the scenario where what is good for the industry as a whole, i.e. for everybody to reduce production, is not necessarily in the interests of an individual farming business.
So what would you think could pull dairy markets out of this nosedive that they're in at the moment?
Well, there's only two things that will do that. One is supply, one is demand. Those are the two drivers for markets. Demand isn't going to change much at all, I don't think. So it has to be a supply-driven correction. What matters is what milk production is like in the US, in Germany and France. Germany and France are the big powerhouses of EU milk production. So what happens there is critical. Reducing production here will help, but if we reduce production and Europe doesn't, it won't make that much difference.
You've said that UK dairy farmers are facing the worst milk crash in history. I mean, that's a pretty strong statement. Is the situation really that bad?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at the numbers and I've compared previous years where the milk prices have crashed, and prices have come down faster this time than at any other time in history. And despite the fact that farmers have had a brilliant 2025, all of that good is going to be undone very quickly in 2026 because milk prices for most farmers are really terrible.
Dairy analyst Chris Walkland talking to Kaz there. As he mentioned, drought was a concern for dairy farmers in some areas last year, something which is still having an effect on the economics of their businesses. Feeding cows is a significant chunk of the cost of producing milk. And this week on Farming Today, we've been focusing on feeding animals through the winter. Peter Brewer has a herd of 70 cows on his mixed farm near Ross-on-Wye in Herefordshire. He told our reporter Bob Huckenhull about the extra cost of finding enough forage.
Normally, sort of first cut grass silage, we'd look to make sort of 350, 400 tonnes to go into the silage pit. Then any surplus after that on subsequent cuts would go into round bales or hay, and we'd sort of normally make 700 to 800 of those bales. This year we only made 300, 350, I think. So we don't have that surplus to feed later on. So we didn't have any spring growth in the grass. We didn't have any grass through the summer, and it really impacted on the other crops, particularly our forage maize crop. That ended up being half the yield that we would normally expect. So we've ended up then buying in a lot of extra forage.
Presumably it's cost you quite a lot.
Buying in that maize has cost us about £20,000, and then the actual growing of the crop costs the same, but because the yield is half, it costs twice as much for what we've got in the pit. If spring's sort of 2 weeks late, then we're going to be looking at walls and floors and not having anything to feed the cows.
You'll have to fork some money out and buy some, presumably, will you?
Unfortunately, I don't think we're in the financial position now to buy any more in. We're in a fortunate position where we have grazing for the cows, so the only thing we will be able to do is turn them out onto less than ideal grass in bad conditions. If that's what it comes to, then that's what we'll have to resort to doing.
Dairy farmer Peter Brewer. Well, as we heard there, growing crops successfully for winter feed can make a big difference to the bottom line. The weather in West Wales was kinder for growing maize, alongside a new crop, sunflowers, on Claire Griffiths' dairy farm. As Marie-Claire Carey-Jones reports, it's an experiment aimed at reducing the amount of protein feed he needs to buy in.
We are milking 500 pedigree Holsteins here.
So you've got some of your calves in front of you here?
Yeah, these are weaned calves. They start off in individual hutches and then they move into groups and then move around the farm as we go.
Well, we've walked over now to what you call your maize bunker.
Yeah, so we grow around 200 acres of maize here, along with 500 acres of grass in the clamp next door. And we are 2 years deep now into a maize and sunflower project. 20 acres of companion cropped maize with sunflowers. So, it's 10% of what we're doing. We've had some funding through Farming Connect, and it's something I quite enjoy. I quite enjoy an R&D project.
And why did you want to start growing the sunflowers?
Just to raise the protein in the mix. So far, we've had a real mixture of results. The first year, we found it difficult to get a consistent crop because the maize drilling, we mixed the seed and it wasn't running nicely through the drill. Whereas this year, it's been a lot better. The analysis has come back 32% starch with 10% protein, whereas your standard crop of maize is your sort of 8% protein. So I know it's only small gains, but over a large area, it'll make a big difference.
Why is it important to you to be able to grow your winter feed here on the farm?
With volatility in milk prices and things, we can't rely on the milk price to be able to buy in all of our feed. We're obviously buying in a lot of food to the business, but we aren't buying any forage in. And I guess by being more self-sufficient in protein, it means we've got to buy less protein, which is going to be obviously financially beneficial.
Well, I've just walked to another part of the farm now to talk to Simon Pitt, who is the Farming Connect Dairy Officer.
Here is one of our participants in the Tryout Fund project. Anything that reduces cost on farm that's grown at home has got to be an option to consider.
And are more farms looking to do things like this to increase their winter feed?
Yes, without question. It reduces the reliance on purchased-in feeds at a lower cost, and hopefully they can produce good yields as a result.
Now, we're doing this interview here in the shed with the noisy cars behind us because it is raining outside. What sort of a role does the Welsh climate play in the success or otherwise of projects like this?
Well, it can play quite a vast role because we had a terrifically wonderful summer this year, which it could have dented growth, but it was actually quite good for many, particularly the maize growers, whereas the previous year it was a much tougher year and crops were grown later and the rain impacted on the yield.
Marie-Claire Carey-Jones reporting from a wet Cardiganshire. For many years, organic pig and poultry feed blends were able to include up to 5% non-organic ingredients. But that changed on the 1st of January this year. Any birds over 30 weeks old and pigs over 35 kilos must now be fed with 100% organic diets. It brings UK producers in line with EU organic rules. Marie Lennon has been to Eastleach Farm in Gloucestershire to meet Helen Wade and her herd of pigs.
Hello, darling. Hello. All right, you silly. We grow 3 years of cereal and pulse crops, bi-crops, so we grow wheat and beans together and pea and barley usually together, with some oats. And then we sow herbal ley, and then we silage that in the first year, and then in the second year, the pigs go onto it and just dig it up. And have a lovely time doing it. Yeah.
This is a commercial organic pig farm, and there aren't many of those. What are your feed costs like?
Oh, huge, and that is why organic pork costs so much more. They are probably 2.5 times a commercial system.
Nice, you walk across the yard, and we are now in your grain store.
Yeah, so in here we've got the wheat and bean mix, the main component of our pig feed. This tank here has got organic oilseed rape oil, and here is our potato protein. So we use a very small amount. We use 5% in our ration of potato protein. It's actually produced in France. Now, currently we're allowed to use this under the derogation of a 5% non-organic protein source. So basically it replaces soya for us. We only need to use a small amount of this in our ration. So the change that's come in has meant really that we're going to have to use soya. It would be organic soya, which is available, but at the moment it's only available from China, from much further away. And we do have customers that are buying our pork because it's soya-free, which is a real step backwards.
Well, I've left behind those huddles of pigs scuttling about high up on a very green Cotswold hill to come a few miles down the road to a different farm, because that deregulation of the 5% non-organic allowance in feed also applies to poultry. John Newman is farm manager here at Abbey Home Farm near Cirencester. We can't go and see your chickens because of bird flu regulation, but tell me what I would see if I could go and see your chickens.
OK, so we have about 250 to 300 layers, depends on time of year. They're all in one house producing eggs that we sell through our farm shop. And then we also have meat birds that all get processed and go through the farm shop.
Having the 5% allowance of non-organic matter within that organic feed mix, what do you get from that?
So generally the 5% bit that's been in there in the past would be to do with the protected proteins and to do with the supply of amino acid in the ration. Very, very challenging feeding poultry particularly. They seem to be much more vulnerable about how the amino acid balances in their diet and how that affects either how fast they grow or how many eggs they produce or their overall health and welfare. And it was just about availability, really. It was difficult to get these ingredients organically, so therefore there was an allowance. But there was always a desire to move to that. It's been there for a long time that it would be going out. It's just, I guess, we've now reached the point where the line is drawn.
And luckily, your supplier has made up that 5%, and now it's completely organic, so you haven't got to do any more legwork. It's the work has been done for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we buy from a supplier who has taken that initiative. And I guess most consumers would have been thinking it was 100% organic feed anyway. So it just feels like we're just kind of catching up a little bit in some respects.
Marie Lennon reporting there. Getting hold of supplies is a whole lot more complicated if you're farming on an island. Crofters on the Western Isles rely on hay and straw brought in by lorry and ferry from mainland Scotland. Nancy Nicholson hopped into the cab of a haulier whose family has been supplying forage to the Western Isles and Skye for generations as he embarked on the journey to Lewis.
Morning! Climbing up into the cab of Ryan Ironside's huge hay and straw lorry on a freezing cold morning. It's still dark out there, snow on the ground, and so the job today and every day for you is dropping off bales of hay and straw to crofters all over the island.
Multi-drop.
Multi-drops.
Yeah.
And you've come from where?
Gamery, down beside Banff, northeast Scotland.
So you're taking straw and hay from arable farmers on the east and dropping it off at the west.
So mostly Aberdeenshire, the hay and straw comes from. It's never just a straightforward load of round bales or square bales. It's usually like a mixture. Like the last load I came in with was about 560 wee bales and about 54 round bales. So some people want wee bales and some people want round bales. So you have to try and mix it all together. It's a bit of a jigsaw. $79.50.
So that's for wee bales.
That's for the wee bales. That's for the sheep. There's 3 rams up there. I gave them last year's yesterday.
Would you be able to do what you do here without a service like this, bringing in
I don't
hay
think
and
so.
straw?
No, I can't take much in that at
in
all.
your car? No.
So this is great. Delivered it to the door with a smile on his face. Always.
It's not cheap though to have to get fodder brought in here.
It's not cheap, but it's not bad. I'll still keep buying them.
You'll still keep buying. Have you worked with Ryan's father and his grandfather as well?
His grandfather, yes, the old fellow. Well, I think he's a lot younger than I am. But I don't know.
Back into the lorry. It's getting a wee bit lighter now. This is a big lorry. You've got fuel costs, you've got ferry costs. How much does a ferry cost for a lorry like this?
It's over the £600 mark. They do help a wee bit because we get a hay rate, so as long as we're coming in with hay and straw, as long as we go back out completely empty, we go out for the price of the peer dues. A round bale of hay is £64 delivered and a round bale of straw is £48 delivered. And the wee bales are $7.95 for a bale of hay and $6.95 for a bale of straw. We go to Skye as well, and I mean a round bale in Skye is $49.50. So that just shows like the difference with the ferry costs involved.
Is this the last drop?
This is the last stop in this road anyway.
Good morning, nothing bad. It's not a great day.
It's not a great day.
How many bales are you getting today?
100.
You wish.
Oh, and there's your bill.
I suppose I'd better pay him.
Do you depend on him?
Totally 100%. It's good quality, it's good service and reliable.
And you're delivered to your door? Or in
door.
about 4 or 5 places for you?
Exactly where you want it.
You can't really make fodder here?
Oh, not now. We used to. Different climate altogether now. It's too wet.
That's 10 drops with just a lorry by itself around the island. That's quite an easy load, quite a good load for a change. I've seen me having anything from 18 to 28 drops.
So it's back on the ferry tonight. You'll get a rest on the ferry and then all the way home and out again tomorrow up to Skye.
Yeah. It is a lot more challenging when it's snowing and the roads aren't so great. It takes a wee bit longer to do it and there's a lot of places you sometimes can't get to when it's bad weather, but you just got to do your best. When you know you're appreciated, you didn't mind going an extra mile. It helps. It helps.
Bye, thank you.
Nancy Nicholson with Ryan Ironside there. And that's it from us. I'm back tomorrow lunchtime with a special programme about the increasing amount of illegal meat being smuggled into the country and the risk that poses both to our health and to farms. That's The Price of Meat here on BBC Radio 4 tomorrow at 1:30. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer today was Sarah Swadling. Farming Today This Week is a BBC Audio Bristol production.